potential. From the moment we are born, we are conditioned to think and believe that the external physical world in which we live and move is reality. Reality, according to this conditioning, is that everything around us exists in its physical form. Whereas science has demonstrated as an irrefutable fact that reality is formed by our senses and is the translation of the input from our senses in our brain. The fact is, what we perceive to be reality, portrayed by our eyes, is nothing more than a light wave frequency that reflects from any object, passes through the retina, and travels from the eye to the brain. Our sense of scent and hearing work the same way. A scent passes through the nose via nasal receptors and to the brain as an electrical frequency, just as a sound travels through the ear to the brain as an electrical frequency. Frequencies of all kinds, some of which originate from objects or beings that are not yet known to us, reach the brain the same way. The brain converts all these waves within itself and portrays the images that we see. These facts lead to the conclusion that everything we see, smell, and hear, without exception, is nothing else than what is called a multi-dimensional holographic world. Do these images that we perceive exist outside our created multidimensional holographic world? They probably do, because the frequencies emanating from these objects create these perceptions. However, none of the objects that exist on the outside exist in their original form, shaped by our mind. The question rises: in which form these objects do exist in the mind? In our mind, we have a collection of pictures that are formed by electrical frequencies from every one of you and from each and every object we perceive with our senses. What happens when we record a video? The camera records the sounds and images, but the camera doesn't record my inner thoughts and feelings and what's happening inside my body. It only records pictures of the outer shelf, which are created by electrical frequencies. So in the holographic world in my mind, you all exist as a sort of video album of individual frames created by electrical frequencies. When I say, I am thinking of you, I remember you, this means that I recall the video album of you in my mind. I watch the recorded video albums, called memory, by recalling them from the archive cache memory in my mind. So, when saying I mean an entity which lives in a multidimensional, holographic life in my mind. This is the same with each and every one of us. Anyone. who exists as a mind, lives and experiences according to this system I just described. Therefore, my mother is a video album, as is my father, as are my siblings, my children, my family, and my friends. Everything exists as a video album in the cache memory of my mind. A video album that consists of pictures or snapshots which are the product of electrical frequencies that reach my brain. This is what my world is composed of. Each time I get angry with someone, my anger is directed to the video album in my mind of that person. It all transpires within my mind, and my anger does not touch or reach that person. My struggle, my happiness, my anger, and my sadness are all with a specific video album. At times, the video albums in my library are the source of my suffering, and I torture myself with my anger, desires, or sadness. At other times, they are the source of joy and pleasure and give me happiness. Well then, how is it possible that a visual image can exist in my brain? The answer is simple. Do you have dreams? Yes, you do. Where does a dream take place? Is it something that happens somewhere outside where you can watch it? The answer is no. Perhaps it would be better if you did not call it a dream, but a multidimensional holographic world. In the same token, the things that you live and experience when you are awake can be referred to as daydreams.
Dışsallıkla alakası olmayan şeye eğer rüya diyorsan, bu anlama kullanıyorsan onu, bu da gündüz rüyası.
In reality, you do not live in the external world, but you live in a world that is created by yourself. Just like you enter a different world from your partner sleeping next to you when you go to sleep, your waking hours are also spent within your internal dream world, separate from the world of others. The fact that you communicate and interact with your partner does not mean that you share your partner's world. Your partner lives his or her life, and you live yours. There is only some interaction between your worlds. You feel as if you live in a materialized world. This is not the case. You live within your brain. You live in the holographic world in your brain. In fact, there is more to it than just this. There is a dark side as well. We now know that the brain is a network. composed of hundreds of billions of neurons.
Zaten kesin tespiti yapılmamış tahmini rakamlar. Arttıranın üstünde kalsın.
The brain is dark. It harbors no light. Even though there is no light in our brain, the brain is able to use its ability to convert frequencies to create the illusion that we call sight.
Bu görüntüyü gördüğünü oluşturuyor.
Allah has bestowed the brain with such an extraordinary ability that it is able to create the illusion of light and images where neither exists.
Olmayan şeyi var dedi.
We call our physical cognitive center a brain and see it as part of our body. That is what we have been taught. But as I mentioned before, we know that the brain is a network composed of hundreds of billions of neurons. During the past 5 years, it has been determined that each neuron within our brain works with its own distinctive frequency.
Her biri bir diğerinden farklı frekans ihtiva ediyor.
Let's revert back to discussing the eye and sight. The frequencies of waves that are transmitted from the eye to the brain range between 4,000 and 7,000 angstrom. In the same manner that light emits a frequency that we can detect, sound also emits a frequency range. The human ear can detect vibrations which pass through our eardrums ranging from 16 to 16,000 hertz. Other frequencies that exist are radar frequencies, AM frequencies, FM frequencies, etc. How do these frequencies exist? Let's say you were to draw a line with a razor, and we call that line the range of frequencies visible to the human eye. Above and below this range of frequencies are an infinite range of frequencies that our eyes cannot perceive. The frequencies we can perceive comprise no more than a razor-thin line of a mere 3,000 angstrom. Somewhere in between these two ranges of frequencies are frequencies that we perceive in the form of sense or as taste. In fact, the universe is an infinite range of frequencies. The universe, our world, other worlds, in fact, existence in itself, are nothing but an ocean of frequencies.
Evren bir frekans okyanusu. Bu frekans
In this ocean of
olan
waves,
evrende bu dalgaların
entities
birbirini
perceive each other
çözümlemesi
by
suretiyle
detecting
algılanan
and converting each other's
varlıklar
frequencies.
söz konusu. Dünya
The true
bir
essence
dalga frekansı
of
kitlesi.
all beings,
Güneş
our
dalga
world,
frekansı
the
kitlesi.
sun, our galaxy,
Dalga
and the
frekansı
universe
kitlesi.
itself is nothing
Beden dalga
but a
frekansı
network
kitlesi.
of
Bütün
frequencies.
mahlukat bildiğimiz dalga frekansı kitlesi. Bütün yaratılmış diye bildiğimiz alemlerdeki bütün
Each
canlıların orijinal
living
hakikati
entity
dalga frekansı kitleleri. Her biri
emits
kendi
a certain range
yoğunlaşma veya
of frequencies,
kütleşme diye bir tanımlayacağım.
and each entity perceives these
Şeklini
and
göre
frequencies
bir tür oluşturuyor.
and form their holographic universe
Algıladığı
with
frekanslar
what they
o türün
perceive.
dünyasını meydana getiriyor. Dolayısıyla
So, there are an infinite number of configurations within an endless amount of dimensions in the universe.
diyebileceğimiz
Therefore, the amount of living
türler
entities
sonsuz.
within a universe consisting of infinite configurations and dimensions are infinite. And as all entities exist within the frequencies they can perceive, they are oblivious to the infinite amount of other entities in other ranges of frequencies.
Gerçekte
In fact,
farklı
there are no
boyutlar
different
yok.
dimensions.
Orijinde
Originally,
tek
there
bir
is
boyut.
only one configuration and one dimension.
Frekans okyanusu.
This dimension can be described as an ocean of
Bu
frequencies.
frekans okyanusunda
This ocean of frequencies is broken down into an infinite number of frequency ranges, combinations, and configurations.
ben dediğim şey mi? Beni ne meydana getirdi?
This
Önce
is what we mean when we say,
ben
I.
kelimesiyle herkesin bildiği ve ortak olarak kullandığı
How does the self that we refer to come into existence?
oluşumundan söz edeyim.
First of all, I'd like to talk about the common usage of self
Oluşmuş bende.
and how it is created.
Oluşmuş ben daha
I call it
spermle yumurtanın
false self,
birleştiği anda
or the formed I.
oluşan
The creation of
genetiklerin
the false self starts with the genetic data that results from the coupling
beynin
of the
aldığı
sperm
çeşitli
and
astrolojik etkilerle
egg.
şekillenen özellikleri
It is then
daha sonra da
further shaped by the influence of astrological effects on the specific development
beyne yönelik
of the
istek
brain.
ve arzularının taleplerinin
And
beyin tarafından
later still,
cevaplanması suretiyle oluşan ve kendini
through the needs
beden kabul eden
and desires of the body that are met by the brain. This combination of influences leads to the creation of a false self that assumes that the self is nothing more
ikinci beyin
than the body that
tarafından
contains the brain. This self is
bedenimizde
primarily formed
ikinci
by the
beyin
second brain. We have a second brain in our body.
son bilimsel araştırmalar tarafından açığa çıkarıldığı üzere
The latest research shows
bağırsaklarda
that there are many
Milyonlarla veya yüz milyonlarla nöron tespit edildi beyin hücresi.
millions of neurons, also known as brain cells,
Bu
in our
nöronlar
gut.
bağırsaklarda üretilen bir kısım hormonları ve salgıları,
These
kimyasalları
neurons are the
beyne
source
yollayarak
of our bodily needs and
bedensel
sensations.
istek ve arzuları meydana
These needs and sensations are created by sending certain enzymes and hormones to the brain.
Yemek istiyorum, ben su istiyorum, ben acıktım,
All
ben seks yapmak
sensations, like
gibi
hunger, fatigue,
bütün bu istek
thirst,
ve arzular
lust, and other bodily needs
ikinci beyin diye bahsedilen
are
second
generated by the gut brain,
diye tanımlanan ki bu isimle
which is also known as the second brain.
çok ünlü bir doktorun araştırması
More information on this subject
second brain.
can be found in Michael Garson's book,
İkinci beyin
The Second
beyni
Brain.
kontrol ediyor. Doğduğun
The second
andan
brain,
itibaren
therefore, controls the
tamamıyla
primary
bu
brain.
beyin, ana beyni. Yani
From the
asıl
instant of
beyni,
birth,
ana beyni değil de
this
asıl beyin
second brain has
kontrol
control
altına
over the
almış olduğu
primary
için
brain, better referred to
sen
as
onun
the
yönetimi ve
true
esaretinde
self.
dünyaya gelmiş durumda olduğun için de
As this
onun
control
seni
starts from the
yönettiğini hiç
instant
fark
of birth,
etmiyorsun.
you are
Sen kendi
completely
bir şeyler
oblivious of the
yapıyorsun
fact
zannediyorsun.
that you are a slave of the second brain
Halbuki
and think that
seni
you are the one who
yöneten,
decides what to do.
sana ne yapacağını emreden
In reality, however,
bu
your
ikinci
gut
beyin,
brain
bağırsaklardaki
is
ikinci
pushing and even commanding you what
bu
to
ikinci
do.
beyin ana beyinde
The second brain
şartlanmalara ve değer yargılarına göre
has you fulfill
kendi istek ve
its
arzularını
wishes
sana
and
yaptırıyor.
desires based on the preconditioning and biases that have formed in the primary brain.
Adına tasavvufta nefsi emmare demişler. Emreden nefs.
In Sufi,
Nefs,
this is referred to as
emmare,
the commanding formed self.
karındaki veya bir diğer
By convincing
tabirle
you
ağızdaki
that you exist in a physical world,
ikinci beyin.
the commanding formed self directs you to pursue
Sana kendini
material
madde
desires.
ettirir ve sadece madde peşinde koşmayı emreder. Maddi
It makes
zevklerini,
fulfilling
maddi
your
arzularını
materialistic
yapmak için
needs and pleasures the purpose of your
hayvani
life.
değerlerini ortaya koydurtur. Eski düşünürler öyle demişlerdir.
It highlights your animal traits.
Düşünen hayvan
Islamic philosophers
veya en gelişmiş
described a person ruled by his second brain as an animal that thinks, or the most sophisticated animal.
bedeni tamamen hayvan.
The term sophisticated animal
Bütün hayvanlarda
refers to
özelliklerle
the human body,
yeme, içme, uyuma, efendime söyleyeyim,
as
seks yapma,
the human body
bunların hepsi bütün hayvanlar.
has needs that are commonly shared by all animals.
İşte bu bağırsak beynindeki istek ve arzuların
The desires
kaynağı
of the gut brain are formed and fed
bulunduğun çevrenin şartlandırdığı şekilde
by the way your environment has filled you
şöyle otur,
with
şöyle
biases
beraber
and
yapıyoruz.
preconditioning.
Bunları ye, bunları iç, bunları tüket.
The gut
vesaire.
brain thus
O
commands you to
şartlanmalara
sit,
dayalı bir biçimde
walk,
o
act,
ye der,
and consume
o yemek
according
istiyorum
to
der,
your
o seks
preconditioning.
istiyorum der. Çevre şartlanması da
Once
onun
the gut
isteğini
brain
nasıl
commands an action,
oluşturacağını
our primary brain will activate itself
ve bu sistem
to
zaten
fulfill
otomatik olarak
the desired action.
bu otomatik çalışan sistemi de sen
This system
benimlersin,
functions
ben böyle
automatically.
istiyorum dersin.
Typically, we will take ownership of this automatic reaction by actually saying, I want it to be so. In fact, this is also automated within the brain.
Eğer herhangi bir şekilde
If one day you say, I eat,
sen de ya
Drink.
tamam yiyorum, içiyorum, seks yapıyorum,
have sex,
yiyorum,
sleep,
ben ne yapıyorum falan ama bunların hepsi
But all of these are animal traits.
Yani benim
What about
insan
what makes me
kelimesiyle
human?
etiketlenecek yanım neresi? Ben neyim? Ben
And if you
sadece
ask
yiyip
questions like,
içip öyle
who am
olmayan
I?
ve bir süre
Am I an
sonra
animal
ölecek
which
olan bir
eats,
hayvan mıyım?
drinks, reproduces, and sleeps, and eventually vanishes after death? This self-questioning, even though you remain under the control of the second brain, will eventually open new dimensions within your mind. To find the answers to these questions, you have two paths that you can follow. Either you believe and follow the teachings of those in the know, as it is impossible to obtain a manual to decipher the system that we exist in, or if you were born in the beginning of the 21st century, you'd start to think and question based on the scientific facts and realities. For now, let's leave aside the aspect of faith and move forward based on scientific facts. The first scientific premise is that all we see and witness is nothing other than a holographic world within our minds. All the world is a stage. All we live and see is like a stage, and this stage is set in our minds. We exist in individual cocoons, unrelated to one another. Although we receive frequencies from each other, the frequencies we receive determine the extent to which we are aware of each other. As I previously explained, though I receive frequency waves from you, I can never know your inner world, nor can you ever know mine. The only reflection that comes to me from you is me. When I am told of someone, all that I can perceive is a projection. That's all. I do not know that person. I can never truly know that person. We exist in a world of pictures, and we live submerged with infinite albums made up of pictures. In the meantime, we live ignorant of both this fact and the fact that our lives are being directed by our second brain. An interesting fact is that there are 3 core structures in the brain. In fact, there are multiple structures, but they bear less relevance than the core 3, so I will focus on these. The main structure in the formation of the human with animalistic traits is the cerebellum. There is little difference between us learning a trait through practice and repetition from a lab rat. Navigating its way through a maze using memory and its sense of smell. The cerebellum is situated in the back of the human
Diğerlerine göre daha
brain
düşük bir alan.
and naturally covers a greater
İkinci
surface when
önemli
compared with
olan
other animals. The second important
insandaki
structure
amigdala.
is called the
Beyin
amygdala
içinde şu tırnağım kadar
and is a tiny gland
olan bir bölüm.
within the brain.
Bu bölüm sendeki bütün korku
The amygdala is the source of fear
ve
and
duyguların kaynağı.
emotion.
Gene bu alanda son yapılan bilimsel
The
çalışmalar
role of the amygdala has been well researched and documented in several research projects.
öylesine bunlar artık batıda bilinen şeyler.
This knowledge
Anlattığım amigdala
has become so mainstream
şeyler, şu demin biraz evvel
that you often
dağıttığım
find documentaries
Amerika'daki historic
on this very matter
bilimsel program
on channels like the History Channel.
bu düzeyde. Her ne kadar
Though these subjects are less frequently discussed in Europe and the Middle East, the role and function of the amygdala is well documented in the US.
duyguların kaynağı.
The amygdala is the source of fear and emotion,
Amigdalanın üstündeki baskın
the source of the chemicals that influence the amygdala is the second brain.
İkinci beyinden gelen
Influences coming from the second brain create fears in the amygdala.
insanın da hayatiyetinin devamı.
Many of the primal survival instincts of human beings, the most important being self-preservation, are based on fear.
Hayatiyetini devamı.
Humans need to continue to avoid what they fear to protect themselves and continue living.
Zaten ateşin
It is
içinde
fear that stops us from jumping into fire.
yanacağım korkusu dediğin zaman o yanma
The fear of
korkusu
being burnt
amigdaladan
emanates
çıkıyor.
from the amygdala.
Veya diğer korkular.
Researchers in the US have demonstrated that the amygdala can dramatically vary in size from one person to the other.
Göre bazıları
Certain people have been found to have an amygdala that is 59% smaller than normal, others an amygdala that is as much as 75% smaller than normal.
araştırmalarda bu 1/4 oranında.
It appears that serial killers have an amygdala that is 75% smaller than
Adamlara
normal.
soruyorlar. Diyorlar ki
When
bir kişi öldürdüm. Bundan
the serial killer
bir pişmanlık var.
is asked whether he regrets his actions,
Hiçbir pişmanlık veya acıma duygusu duymadım. Hiç
his
acıma-
reaction
Hayır diyor.
is that his actions were, in his opinion, normal.
Psikopatlar diye bahsedilen.
And he demonstrates no regret.
Bu da bizim korkularımızı.
The
hayvani
amygdala
korkuları
controls our fears, our animal
veya
instincts, and our
bedensel
emotions.
kaynaklanan duygularımızı
In other words,
yönlendiriyor.
it controls emotions that are linked to our view
Bir de bunun
of our body.
ötesinde en
The
önemli
third
olan
and most important
yön.
and most researched structure of the brain is the prefrontal cortex.
Ön alan, beynin
This
ön lobu,
frontal lobe
frontal korteks,
is responsible
bizim
for
düşünme,
higher levels
tefekkür,
of reasoning,
uygulama,
questioning,
akli
and
faaliyetler diye
and cognitive functions.
tanımladığımız işlevleri meydana getiriyor. Bu bölümün en güzel
This part
gelişme gösterdiği
of the brain
süreç
Develops fastest
7 ile
between the ages
21 yaş arasında
of 7
en hızlı
and
gelişmeyi
21.
bölüm burada oluşturuyor. Onun için
That is
beyin
why
devresinde
information acquired during youth will have greater depth
çok daha
and
güçlü olarak
is
oturuyor
not
ve çok daha
easily
fazla
forgotten.
gelişme imkanı sağlıyor.
The
Yaşlılık
process
öğrenme çok
of
fazla
learning
öğrenmez olur.
becomes more difficult with age.
İşte
The
sorgulamaları
prefrontal
getiren
cortex is the part of the brain
bu
that
frontal
leads us to question things.
fakat istediği kadar bu sorgulamaları
However,
getirsin. Eğer
if the
ikinci
effects
beynin,
of the second brain
ana beyin üzerindeki baskısı
are not
frenlenmez,
controlled
zayıflatılmazsa,
curbed, and
bilinç
weakened,
içindeki bu
the cognitive abilities in the primary brain
çıkamıyor.
can't function to
Bir
capacity.
an için sen bunu düşünüp hissetsen,
Although your frontal lobe may momentarily propel your cognitive abilities, eventually your bodily emotions and animal instincts will occupy you with requirements of the body and take you off the trail into that direction.
kişinin nesi oluyor ikinci beyin?
What does this second brain represent?
Sana gerçek
You have been provided with factual data. The factual data is telling you
bu ikinci beyin
that you are not an animal structure that is governed by the second brain.
sen
You are beyond this animal structure. But then what or who are you?
nesin? Şimdi biraz evvel dedim ki
Each neuron in the human brain
hücre bir
has a unique frequency.
ve yüz milyarlarca
And there are hundreds of billions of neurons, which means that there are hundreds of billions of frequencies.
görmek
Of these frequencies, we only use a couple for perceiving with our senses.
beyninde böyle bir frekans
But the
kapasitesi.
frequencies of your brain are far more.
Frekans okyanusu.
As the universe is made up of frequencies and is an ocean of waves, we can conclude that your mind mirrors the universe.
Diğer ifadeyle beynin
In other words, your brain is a micro universe, and the universe is a macro mind.
sende gerçekte böylesine bir potansiyel
Although
var.
you possess such a vast potential,
Fakat sen kendindeki bu
you are
potansiyelin
busy
farkında
fulfilling your
olmayıp
bodily wishes and desires.
ikinci beynin oluşturduğu hayvani
You are
istek,
unaware
arzu ve talepler peşinde koşarak
of the potential within you
yalnızca bedeninin keyfi ve arzuları
because you are
çabasıyla
under
yaşıyorsun.
control of your
Bunun için
second
icabına
brain.
çalıyorsun, çırpıyorsun,
In
yalan
order to
söylüyorsun,
fulfill your
iftira
desires and
atıyorsun.
wishes, you are capable of
Sen
stealing,
çocuk velayeti işliyorsun.
lying, and slander,
Bedeninin ve beynin
all for the sake of
çıkarlarını
your bodily and animal desires.
Halbuki sende böyle bir potansiyel var.
Whereas
Potansiyel yüzünden
you possess an infinite potential within you,
halife
for which
unvanı verilmiş.
they have granted you the title of the caliph.
O potansiyelin halifesisin sen.
You are the caliph of your infinite potential.
İşte bu bilgi sana geliyor.
And this
Bu bilgi
information
hidayet.
is meant to guide you.
Senin
That
beyninde
means
hologram dünyana
the Messiah,
Mahdi inmiş
the
olan-
guided one, has revealed himself
Senin dünyana Mahdi gelmiş oluyor ve sen
in your holographic world,
işin
and that
hakikatiyle
this knowledge
yüz yüze oluyorsun,
has
karşılıklı.
revealed reality to you.
Ama işin bu hakikatiyle yüz yüze
In the
olmanın
same way that you
karşılığı,
have the Messiah, the guided one,
karşında da Deccal dikiliyor.
you also have the
Ve
failed
o
Messiah,
Deccal
the
seni
Dajjal,
cennetine çağırıyor.
who invites you to his heaven as well.
Şuurundaki Mehdi'ye karşı
On one hand,
bedenin
there is Mahdi,
Deccal olarak
the guided one,
seni
in your consciousness,
bedensel
and on the other,
istek ve arzulara
Dajjal,
davet ediyor.
inviting you to the pleasures of the flesh,
Zevkine ve keyfine, içmenin
the
zevkine ve
pleasure
keyfine,
of eating,
sahip olma hırsına,
drinking,
keyfine ve zevkine,
ambition,
seksin
and
peşinde
sex,
koşma keyfine
which are meant to
çağırıyor ki,
confine you to
seni
the limits
hakaniyetle sınırlı
of
kayıtlamaya.
the animal.
İşte onun içindir ki deniyor ki Deccal'la
That's why it is said,
karşılaştığın zaman
when
Deccal'ın
confronted with
cennetini
Dajjal,
seçen sunucu
don't accept
cehennemde,
his heaven because it will
Deccal'ın
become your
cennetini
hell.
seçenler de cennete,
Conversely, those who choose Dajjal's hell will attain heaven.
Deccal'ın cehennemi,
What would be categorized as
bedenin bu
Dajjal's
istek ve
hell?
arzularına sınır çekip
It would be the limiting of your bodily wishes
kendi
and
öz
desires
kuvvelerini
and the manifestation of the essential strength
Cennet yaşamını nasıl
within
tarif
you.
ediyorlar?
How could a heavenly
Cennete
existence
giren
be
kişi
described?
her ne dilerse o
Those whose
anda
existence
dilediği
is a
yerine
state
gelir.
of heaven have each and every wish fulfilled instantly.
Böyle bir istek ancak Allah'ın kendi
Such
özel
power can
hikmetlerinin
only
sıfatının
exist
sende açığa
through the
çıkmasıyla mümkün.
unfolding of Allah's characteristics through you.
Biz bir şeyi olmasını
As
istersek
stated in the
olmuyor.
Quran, once we ask for something to be, it will be.
İstediğini anında
So what does this
yapacaksa,
actually mean?
oluşturacaksa,
If all those that enter into a state of heaven can fulfill each and every wish,
kuvvetin açığa çıkmasıyla
it
yaşayacaksın.
means that you will live by the manifestation of that holy, supreme power
Ya
within your
hakikatinde olan
essence.
bunu tercih için Deccal'ın cehennemini
So in order to
seçeceksin.
live this truth, you choose Dajjal's hell, which leads you to Allah's heaven.
Veya tersine
Or you choose
Deccal'ın cennetini seçeceksin. Bunun
Dajjal's
sonucunda
heaven
kendi hakikatindeki
and live
Allah'ın
its
bu
consequences,
özellikleri açığa
which is
çıkarmaktan
being
bağımsız
incapable
kalmış
of manifesting the power within you
neticede
and living a life filled with the
keyfi
pleasures
şekilde yaşamak.
of animals.
Ama bunun başarman da kolay değil.
But living the supreme power within your essence is not easy
Deccal'ın
to
insanları
accomplish.
öldüremez
Humans cannot kill their Dajjal.
diye tanımladığımız o düşünen
By
hayvan,
humans, I
Deccal'ı
refer to
öldüremez.
the thinking animal
Deccal'ın
that is
öldürülmesinin
described
tek bir yolu
as
vardır.
human.
İsa yeryüzüne iner. İsa
There is
yeryüzüne
only
indiği
one
zaman
way of killing Dajjal.
Deccal onu görünce
Jesus come to earth. Upon his arrival,
suyun içinde
Dajjal
tuz
will
gibi
dissolve
eriyip gider.
like salt in water.
İsa yeryüzüne indiği zaman haçı kırar.
When Jesus descends on earth,
Hadis sabit değil mi? İsa yeryüzüne
he
indiği
will
zaman
break
haçı kıracak.
the crucifix.
Haç nedir? İşte haç.
What is the crucifix?
Böyle değil mi haç?
Well, here it is. Isn't it like this? Isn't it shown everywhere as this?
İşte haçın manası. Haç bu beden.
The true meaning of the crucifix is this body.
Hakiki haç bu bedendir.
The real crucifix is this body.
Deccal'ın sembolüdür haç.
And the crucifix is the symbol of Dajjal.
Deccal'ın sembolü olarak haç meydana gelmiştir. İsevi kudret.
The power of Jesus lies in the names of life, Hay,
Kudret isimleridir.
the ever-living one, and power, Qadir, the all-powerful.
Hayat
When the quality of life and power are manifested
zaman
in your
ölümsüz
essence
varlık olduğunu
and life,
anlarsın ve ölümsüz
you
varlık
realize that you are immortal.
itibaren de bu
And when you realize your mortal self, which is, your body loses its meaning like salt melting in water.
artık bunun
Thus, you will be set free from being a slave of this.
ihtiyacı olarak
You
olduğu
eat,
kadar yedirirsin.
drink,
İhtiyacı olduğu
copulate
kadar içirirsin.
as needed,
Olduğu
no
kadar
more.
seksini yaparsın. Her şey bunun
We must do
sağlıklı
all we can
hayatta
to
kalıp
assure
senin
that this
hedefine
body stay
ulaştıracak
healthy
şekilde
in order to
gereği
achieve
kadardır.
your ultimate goal.
Bu kadarıyla yapılır.
So,
Dolayısıyladır ki
the whole point
bütün mesele
is to understand
önce
what the self is.
kendi benliğinin ne olduğunu anlamaktır. Kendi benliğin
You must comprehend
o evrene
that
ayna olan,
this reflection
İsa'nın
called
evrenin aynasıdır
the self,
diye bahsedilen
defined in the Quran as the part reflecting the whole,
beynin
is in fact your brain, a
olduğunu
network of
kavrayıp
frequencies.
kavramak zorundasınız.
Today,
Bilimsel
all of this
olarak
has been
bunu
explained
kavradınız.
scientifically.
Eskiden de bunu mecaz olarak anlatmış.
In the past, this reality was explained with metaphors.
Dolayısıyladır ki
So if you believe in the power vested within you,
zaten bu
the
kuvvetin
true
sonucu
self in
olarak
your
var
reality
olduğun için
is
işte
that
senin
power.
hakiki ben,
The potential within me is the
gerçek ben
true
odur.
I.
Bu gerçek beni
The formed or
oluşmuş olan
false self
ben,
has veiled this true self.
kim onu
Those who
arıtırsa,
purify and purge their
arındırırsa
false
o
selves
kurtuluşa ermiştir
will attain
deniyor.
salvation.
Gerçek beynini
the ones who purify the true brain will be free.
Yoksa
And if not, driven by your body's needs and desires, you will eat,
içer,
drink,
sever, sevilir,
love, be loved,
çocuk doğurur,
reproduce,
yavrular,
and after a while,
geçer
you will
gider.
pass away
Ve bu bir
and
süre sonra
become
toprak olur gider.
dust.
Bu toprak olup gittikten sonra
You will then
sen
live
hologram dünyasına
forever with
yüklenip
those recorded videos
o
in
anı
your
videolarını
holographic mind,
sonsuza dek yaşarsın.
suffering
Kendindeki
in the
öz
knowledge that
kuvvetleri
you were unable to
kullanmamanın,
discover
gerçekte o
the
kuvvetlerin
true
kendinde
powers
var
within
olduğunu
you
göreceksin, bileceksin. Ama onları açığa
and
çıkaramadığını
become
da
aware
fark
of their
edeceksin.
existence.
İşte bu
This
cehennem diye tanımlanan
is the
en
great
büyük
suffering
cezadır.
defined as hell.
Milyarlarca kilo
They tell you there are billions of ounces of gold
var diyorlar.
behind the
Yavaş
door,
aksine al diyorlar, inanmıyorsun.
but you don't believe them.
Ama burada
In the meantime,
hayatını sadaka attığın
you make do with the
noktalarda
breadcrumbs
geçiriyorsun.
thrown at your feet.
Hayatının en sonunu
During the final moments of your life,
orada altından
you look behind the door and see the gold.
İşte
That
böyle bir olay.
is what it feels like.
Dolayısıyladır ki
So it is important
bu
that one truly grasps this system.
bu dediğimiz olay
This system was deciphered
bundan
hundreds,
yüzlerce,
in fact,
binlerce sene
thousands of years ago.
bu bizim bugün
The
konuştuğumuz
knowledge
bilgiler
of which we speak today was first shown to us
beynindeki
by the manifestation of highly developed
bahşedilmiş
brain
özelliklerin
qualities
açıklamasıyla Resulullah tarafından
of the Rasul
onun
and
ilmini takip eden
his spiritual
zevat
followers,
tarafından müşahede edilmiş
with no science to demonstrate their knowledge.
mecazlarla, misaller
They relayed the message of the reality of the system with metaphors and examples.
fakat
In those days,
ve misaller
all one could do was to believe the messages explained
iman edip
through examples
ne olduğunu sorgulamadan
and
sadece
carry out what they were
söylenenleri
told.
yapma şansı vardı insanların.
That is to say, you believe in the Rasul or a teacher whom you think is the carrier of absolute truth. And that person guides you
Sana diyor ki
by telling you what reality is. Eat this.
şunu ye, şunu
Don't
yeme,
adore
şunu
your
yap,
animal
şu kadar
structure.
iç, şu kadar seks hayatında.
Restrain your ego.
Hayvaniyetine
Your
takma.
false self
Nefs emmarenin
should not
frenle.
control you.
O seni kontrol etmesin vesaire gibi.
You
talimatlar.
practice his doctrines without understanding the mechanism, and you live the results of your actions.
O söylenenler doğrultusunda
In
bir takım
fact,
şeyleri
the
uyguluyorsun.
only thing that counts in the
Uygulamanın
end
sonucunu alıyorsun.
is the
Zaten
attaining.
önemli olan uygulama ve sonucunu almak.